what's going to happen to us if we want to go get one fish, to feed our family. Everyone should get a hold of their local MLA and say, hey, look, this is not right. David Eby has had a letter sent to him and has been asked to join us. And there's been crickets.
I think you said something synonymous to this could be a dumpster fire for everybody, correct?
Yeah, it's not even done for. It's just going to flip the province upside down, is what it's doing. The division between, a lot of First Nations bands and territories is crazy because, I'm also working with some other First Nations, again, like I said, that don't want this.
I do know people in my family that do fish. And one comment, because I called one of them today, just recreational fishing 4 times a year. Their comment was, it's so, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, Mark, or he's wrong. It's so ridiculous they're doing this because the recreational fishers, they're not taking that many fish. So many just throw them back. And there's already caps on what you're allowed to keep as non-indigenous, that this just seems ridiculous. What do you have to say about that?
The recreational fishing is not the problem, period. And it's not, and I'm not doing it to be biased. The numbers don't lie.
This is a federal thing that's happening with the Musqueam,
Mhm.
correct?
Correct.
However, our NDP government, I'm just gonna say my opinion, useless David Eby, is not saying anything about it, correct?
Correct. Unfortunately, the allocation policy is narrowing that fishery down for them. Now, let's move forward to the Musqueam. If the Musqueam agreement, which has been signed between Department of Fisheries and Oceans and First Nations Musqueam, they can determine, or they possibly will have the right to say whether sport fishing is allowed in that territory. Now, this is the blueprint of this whole thing, is that if that's the case, they still have the right to fish in their territory and possibly as a commercial fishery. Now, if that's the case, sport fishery is gone. That's it in a nutshell. So it's a very, when I get into the Musqueam agreement, and I've been through this many times, and I've gone all the way back to the sparrow and how this was all transformed. Basically, this is a blueprint of what is to come down the road. And if, depending on how Department of Fisheries and Oceans handles this, which I believe that, again, I hope I'm wrong, but I believe that this agreement is the blueprint for further territories to manage the fishery, how they see fit. Now, I'm going to use an example of that is the Washington State, which is currently going through this actual model as we speak right now. So certain areas, you're not allowed to fish at all. It is completely closed off to the sport fishery, period. This model is definitely setting it up for future debate and future, how do I put it, discussions with regards to the fishery itself. I had another person that also read it that has a lot of legal background, and he just said, this isn't good. How this is this interpretation. It's how it's worded. Even at the House level, I did contact some MPs on this. They read it the same way. That this is the model for as territories come into play, and we'll use the Musqueam as the first one. That is what we're going to see in the future. If this is the case, and what we're seeing down stateside, particularly in the Puget Sound area, this is not good for commerce. It's not good for other First Nations who don't want to see the salmon allocation policy changed at all. They want it the way it is. They're happy the way it is because they got businesses too that rely on sport fishing industry. So it's definitely a tangled web right now.
we were talking backstage about how even you were called racist or something around
Yeah.
this. You are actually part Indigenous or First Nations, correct?
Correct. Yeah, on my mom's side.
And Serena as well, same as you, right?
Yes, I'm Cree as well.
And, there's a lot of division. I'm hearing this on a regular basis now. This is not just something that has just happened. It is ongoing, and it's like, if you don't follow what the Chiefs are doing, this is not you, you're not going to do this. This is you're shunned is the better way to put it. And accountability for a lot of this right now is all over the map. There's a lot of uncertainty. There's a lot of, I'm hearing even over the fishery, and this happened about 26 years ago, 27 years ago, when the BC, when First Nations were fighting over territories back then, they were claiming like 130% of each other's land. And it's like, where do you start? Where do you end? And nothing got resolved. So we're back at it again here right now. And I'm seeing a lot of division within their own communities. And I'm seeing more and more of it all the time. Government has done a great job. I'm going to throw this in there. I mean, the government has done a fantastic job of dividing this. And in the middle of it all, we don't even hear from the BC government whatsoever. They've invited, we've had some conservative MLAs come to our events, but we've invited multiple liberal and including NDP MLAs, and no one shows. We have more Indigenous people show up at our event than we did MLAs because they're wanting to learn. They want to know what's going on and they want to understand what's going on. So we're seeing a real divide happening here. I'll tell you, jumping into this and being on and seeing the political side of it has been an eye opener. A lot of things could be resolved very easily, and unfortunately, there's so much interference of proper management. It's not even funny.
You mentioned the government divides us well. So, is this intentional? What is the goal? Why would they do such things?
Well, let's put it this way. Let's roll back to the fish itself. The fish is the attractant. It's a common resource for Canadians, not just for people of BC, not for just Indigenous tribes. It is a common resource for Canadians, period. Right now, there's no trust in the government. Absolutely none. You talk to any fisherman, you even talk to Indigenous people, I'll tell you right now, they don't trust the government as far as they can throw them, unless there's money. And the division is this money is a real devil's advocate in the fact that when we're trying to get something accomplished where there's a proper agreement and everybody's happy and everybody gets their piece, that's not happening. It's just, you can see the shift happening. And again, the Musqueam agreement policy that we've read is the start of that divide, big time. Nobody's denying First Nations of their right to have a food fishery or ceremonial. That's never ever been in the question. Has never been brought up, and unfortunately, it's caused racism. So if I look at the racism, what's causing the racism? Again, I got to go back to government, and I've been called racist. And it's unfortunate that's come to fruition, as a better way to put it.
You and some of the other fishermen took me out on the boats and showed me the area and what was happening in the closures with the different sites. And one of the things we did is we drove by the First Nations there, the fishery, the gas station that they had just
Yep.
invested in the economy. And we looked at the closure of that site. We spoke to residents from Port Renfrew and the
Mhm.
different small businesses, business owners, as well as the fishermen. And everybody was saying the exact same thing to me. They were saying, our economy can't take this. We're remote. We depend upon this. We eat locally. Each of our small businesses, our socio and economic foundation depend upon this. And so, looking at this, looking at remote communities, looking at if this allocation decision comes out, with the minister, looking at the investment in these fisheries, the gas stations. You yourself are a business owner as well, a tackle shop and whatnot. And so looking at these different things, how they would be impacted. But I'm also wanting to look at food security in these communities, and especially at this time right now. If this were to come out, how would this impact on, say, our island here, villages like Port Renfrew? How would this impact our socioeconomic foundations, small businesses, and our food security?
Well, just put it really bluntly, I mean, it would be devastation.
I had read that the Canadian government, that they are looking at phasing out fisheries on the West Coast completely by 2029.
I'd like to touch on the 30 by 30 because we spoke about it earlier, and it's definitely
Yeah.
something I've written about a lot. As I was explaining before, is that our local governments have all signed on to 30 by 30, and we've made the argument as to the majority of Canada is actually uninhabited. So why are we doing this locally? And they have said that it has to be the most resource rich areas that are 30 by 30 protected. So 30 by 30 is 30% of nature, land, and water are protected by 2030 and 50% by 2050. But where I get a little bit confused about their possible rationale behind things like the Musqueam Agreement and stuff is that in the agreement it says they're also going to supply money for fishing boats and accessories and things to that nature. So it's supposed to be protected from all fishing, or it's supposed to be protected from a certain type of fishing or certain people, because if you're protecting it, then ultimately no one would be technically fishing the area. But they're investing a lot of money in boats and other accessories for fishing for the First Nations in the Musqueam Treaty. It's not balanced, actually.
Saying it's not balanced is being nice. The reality is that 65 to 70% of Canada has been untouched by humans or anybody. If they're saying that this area is the most, um, like Vancouver Island is the largest resource in Canada, well, I don't know what they're smoking, but it's not even close. The resources of Canada, the most valuable resources of Canada are in the north, hands down, period. I work up there.
The document you've read already, is it possible then that the government can also cut it off to First Nations in the way you've read it? Have they left it as conservation first, or like, can they screw the First Nations, which we all think they're going to eventually anyway? Well, I do.
I'm gonna agree with part of that statement. Um, I think that they are gonna screw First Nations over. Ultimately, at the end of the day, they are. They're gonna get it so that 50 by 50 or the 2050 drive that will be the nail in the coffin that does that. I think 20 by 30 or the 30 by 30 is the start of it. So you're not allowed to anchor in certain areas now. And that's already started. Your statement is not really untrue of what I think is going to happen eventually.
It's called rewilding.
Yes.
Is how they're using it in the UK, and that's what the 30 by 30 and their 20 by 50 is rewilding. And that's my thought, is that eventually it will be considered a rewilding.
The government doesn't want First Nations working with us. I'll tell you that right now. A guy by the name of Tom Seward said it best. He said, if First Nations and the sport fishing industry, and he used that as an example, got together, he said the government will back down. They will have no choice. And that's why we have taken the initiative to start working with the First Nations that are coming towards us, are coming to us and saying, hey, this is unacceptable. Can you help us? Yeah, we can help you. But it's a two-way street here.
Does this mean that other First Nations or other Indigenous, let's say the Musqueam catches them fishing in what the Musqueam deems as their ocean territory, will they get mad at those other Indigenous and kick them out?
So it's going to be at the discretion of the band and their treaty with another First Nations band and their treaty. The UDB has had a letter sent to them and has been asked to join us, and there's been crickets. Also, one of the MLA representatives out in Souk, same thing, crickets. Just didn't even bother to acknowledge us. So for me, the provincial government should be heavily involved with this. And everyone should get a hold of their local MLA and say, hey, look, this is not right. You know, what's going to happen to us if we want to go get one fish, you know, to feed our family? Now, again, this is early stages. The minister is supposed to be delivering a statement as to how the salmon allocation policy is supposed to look like. Heard rumors this week. I was kind of expecting it in June, but I'm hearing that it may be coming out earlier.